Picture a house so beautiful it makes your chest ache just to look at it. White stucco facade, tall windows with curtains that cost more than most families earn in a year. A front door painted so perfectly black it looks like a hole cut into the world. Gas lamps on either side, glowing amber. A brass knocker polished to the point of cruelty, because the punishment for a tarnished knocker is real and immediate and falls on a very specific person who is not the person who touches the knocker. Now fill that house with warmth. Every fireplace lit by 6 in the morning. Every room hovering at exactly the right temperature. The dining room smelling of fresh flowers and beeswax and something roasting low and slow in the kitchen. Hot water arriving in copper cans without anyone ever seeming to carry it. Boots appearing at the bedroom door, cleaned and polished, as if by magic. Beds made in rooms that were never visibly unmade. Coal appearing in grates that never seemed to be filled. Add the smells of lavender sachets in wardrobes. Starched linen stiff as prayer. Furniture so thoroughly waxed that when the morning light catches it, you have to look away. That's 14 De Vere Gardens, Belgravia, London. The year is 1888. It is a perfect house. It is perfect because 18 people live and work below its stairs, and most of them have been awake since before 4 in the morning, moving through it like ghosts, forbidden from being seen doing the work that keeps it alive. One of those people is you. You're 16 years old. Your name is Ada Marsh. You came here from a village outside Lincoln 6 months ago, with a reference letter your mother asked the vicar to write. A change of clothes wrapped in brown paper, and hands already roughened by farm work and the mangle, and years of helping your mother with other people's washing. 'Cause even back in Lincolnshire your family was never quite poor enough for the workhouse, but always a bad harvest away from it. They said London would be different. They said a good position in a good house would set you up for life. They were not entirely wrong. But they also had no idea. Right now it is 4:37 in the morning, and the alarm clock on the wooden chair by your bed is making a sound like a small animal being murdered. You reach out from under your blanket and press your palm down on it, before it wakes Bessie. You are too late. Bessie is already awake. Bessie is always already awake. You have never once beaten her to consciousness in 6 months of sharing this attic room. You have come to believe that Bessie doesn't entirely sleep, that she exists in some suspended state of almost rest, one ear always cocked toward the clock, always ready, because Bessie has been a kitchen maid for 3 years now, and she has learned what happens when you're not ready. Your turn for the range, she says into her pillow. You already know this. It is always your turn for the range. The range is the coal-fired kitchen stove in the basement, which needs to be cleaned and relit every morning before cook arrives, which means before 6 o'clock, which means you need to be downstairs in the kitchen no later than 5:15, which means you need to be dressed and moving by 4:45, which means there is essentially no reason to sleep past 4:30 at all, except that your body keeps trying, desperately, hopelessly, every single night. The attic room is cold, not cool, not chilly. Cold in the way that only attic rooms in London houses in February are cold, which is to say, completely, aggressively, maliciously cold. The kind of cold that finds the gap between your blanket and your collar and takes up residence there. The kind of cold that makes the floor feel like stone even though it is stone. You sit up. You're already wearing most of what you own. That is normal. Most housemaids sleep in their day shift and their wool stockings, because the alternative is waking up in a room that is 35 degrees and having to put on cold clothes against warm skin, which is a misery that makes the cold floor seem friendly by comparison. Your dress is folded on the chair, the black one with the white collar, not the afternoon uniform with the apron strings tied properly and the cap just so, the morning uniform, darker, harder wearing. Because the morning is when you do the work that makes the afternoon possible, and the morning work is filthy. You know this because on your second day here you wore the wrong dress to light the fires. You wore the afternoon dress. You came back to the attic 2 hours later with blacklead on your sleeves and soot on your collar, and cuffs you had not been able to protect even with your apron because you didn't yet know how. And Mrs. Trent saw you crossing the hall downstairs, and her face did something that you have spent 6 months trying to forget. Mrs. Trent is the housekeeper. Her expression on that morning lasted perhaps 2 seconds. It did not involve raised eyebrows or a sharp word. It was just a look. The look of a woman who has worked in houses like this for 25 years, who has trained 15 girls like you, who knows exactly how much this black dress costs, and exactly how long it takes to wash blacklead out of cotton broadcloth, and exactly what a ruined uniform means for a girl who earns £12 a year and needs most of it to send home. You have never worn the wrong dress to light the fires again. You pull the black dress over your head. The fabric is stiff and slightly damp from where you aired it out the evening before. It smells of coal and soap and something underneath that is just the smell of work, of hard, constant work, which has its own particular scent that you're now so used to you barely notice it on yourself anymore, but that you can smell immediately on other people who do the same kind of work. Your boots are by the door. You lace them in the dark by feel. You can do this in about 40 seconds now. On your first week it took 4 minutes and your hands were shaking and you kept pulling the wrong end of the lace and starting over, and Bessie lay in her bed not saying anything and not helping, which was, you have come to understand, not unkindness, but the specific mercy of someone who knows you need to learn this yourself. You do not light the candle. Candles cost money and you have an allowance of 2 per week for the attic room, which means you use them in the evening when you need to write home or mend something, not in the morning when your hands know the route already. The door opens without a sound. You learn to oil the hinge on your second week. Nobody told you to. You just woke up one morning at 4:30 and thought, there has to be a way to do this without that noise. The corridor outside the attic is dark. 2 more doors. Behind one of them, Mary sleeps. Mary is the upper housemaid. She is 19, and she has been here 2 years, and she is the person who will eventually tell you what you did wrong, sometimes while you're still doing it, because Mary takes a serious view of standards that she considers it part of her job to uphold, even at 5 in the morning. You go down the back stairs. The back stairs are always cold. They are unheated, uncarpeted, narrow enough that 2 people cannot pass comfortably unless one of them turns sideways, lit during the day by a single small window at each landing that lets in a grey rectangle of London light, and utterly lightless at 5 in the morning in February. You hold the handrail with your right hand, not because you might fall, but because you have counted the steps enough times to know them by feel, but the railing makes it faster, and faster means more time before the range, and the range is everything right now. 23 steps to the 3rd floor landing, 12 steps to the 2nd, another 12 to the 1st, another flight down to the ground floor and then back through the servants' corridor, past the butler's pantry with its locked door, past the door to the dining room that you're not allowed to use, down the final set of stairs to the basement kitchen. You can do this walk in under 2 minutes in total darkness. You've done it 432 times. The kitchen smells different at 5 in the morning than it does at any other time. During the day it smells of whatever cook is making, and underneath that the permanent smell of the range and rendered fat and the particular sweetness of the copper, preserving pan that hangs on the wall above the scullery door. In the evening it smells of washing up water and the tallow from the candles that light the servants' hall next door. At 5 in the morning it smells of cold grease and old ash and the particular stillness of a room where the fire has been out for several hours. It smells like a room that is waiting, a room that knows what it is supposed to be but isn't yet and won't be until you fix it. The range is your first responsibility. The range, and then the fires. The range is an eagle range, cast iron, 6 feet long, with 2 ovens and a hot plate and a water heater attached to the side, and a system of dampers and vents that you've been learning to operate since your first morning here, and which you still do not fully understand but can now use well enough to produce a reliable result, which is what Mrs. Trent considers competence. The range needs to be cold cleaned in the morning. That means rake out the ash from the previous day's fire. Remove the ash pan. Carry the ash pan through the scullery to the ash bin outside the back door. Do not drop it. Do not spill it. Do not let the grey residue drift onto the clean floor Mrs. Dobbins expects to find, scrubbed by the time she arrives at 6. Clean the iron with blacklead. Blacklead is a substance made of graphite and lard and something else that permanently stains everything it touches, that your brush spreads across the cast iron surfaces in a fine layer that will, once you've worked it in and polished it back out with a hard brush, give the range the particular dark gleam that suggests permanence and solidity and careful maintenance. Then light the fire. You fill the grate with crumpled paper first. You learned on your 3rd morning that the paper from the previous day's Times, the pages Mr. Harrington has finished with, works better than the cheaper stuff because it's thicker and catches more evenly. You're not allowed to take the Times from the drawing room. You get the pages that have been left in the butler's pantry for exactly this purpose, because Mr. Harrington has been employing housemaids long enough to know that the good paper produces better fires. Kindling over the paper. You lay the small sticks in a tent formation, which is faster than a flat layer and catches better. Over the kindling 3 lumps of coal from the coal scuttle by the range. Not the big pieces, the medium ones. Big pieces smother new fire. Medium pieces sit right and let the air through. You strike the match. The paper catches. The flame moves across it in a low orange wave. The kindling catches. You watch it for 30 seconds, because 30 seconds is how long it takes to know if this fire is going to hold or collapse. It holds. You close the fire door to half open, which gives it air without letting it burn too fast, and you stand up. Your knees hurt when you stand up from that position. They have hurt every morning for the last 3 months. Your right knee more than your left, because the flagstone floor in front of the range is lower on the right side from decades of servants kneeling in the same place. You fit that depression exactly now. Your knee fits into the worn dip in the stone like something cast to the purpose. You're 16 years old and your knee's already hurt in the morning. The coal scuttle next to the range needs to be filled. You carry it to the coal cellar. The coal cellar is through the back of the kitchen, down a short passage that is always colder than anywhere else in the house, because it is essentially outdoors, just underground, and the coal bin sits in a space that might as well be the February street. The coal comes in twice a week, delivered through a hatch in the pavement above and falling into the bin in an avalanche of black noise that the family pretends not to hear. You fill the scuttle. The coal is heavy. wet at the edges from the condensation on the walls. The pieces come away in your hands, leaving grey-black dust on your fingers, and in the lines of your knuckles and under your nails, which you will not entirely remove no matter how much you scrub them. Which is why a housemaid's hands look the way they do. Which is why you're careful around the white linen later. The scuttle weighs about 20 pounds when full. You carry it back to the range. You set it down next to the fire door. It is now 5:23 in the morning. You've been awake for 46 minutes. This is the part of the day that nobody in this house sees. Not the family upstairs, certainly. But also not the butler, Mr. Haynes, who will not appear until 7. Not cook, Mrs. Dobbins, who will not come down until 6:15 and who considers any mess she finds in the kitchen before that point to be your problem, not hers. Not even Mrs. Trent, who manages the entire household with the precision and absolute authority of a general, but who does not come down until 7 either, because her authority is expressed in the outcome she inspects, not the processes she watches. What happens at 5 in the morning in this kitchen happens only between you and the kitchen. You clean the ash pan. You carry it to the back door. The back door opens onto a small stone-flagged area, half below ground level, surrounded by iron railings. The ash bin is in the corner. You tip the ash in. The grey powder rises in a small cloud that the February air catches and blows back at you, lightly dusting your dress and your face, tasting of yesterday's heat, of things burned and gone. It is dark outside. The gas lamps on the street above throw faint orange light down into the area. Somewhere in the house behind you the range is beginning to murmur, the air in the chimney starting to move as the fire takes hold. You can hear it even out here, the particular sound of a fire waking up, which is one of the most deeply comforting sounds in the world if you're not the person who has to light it. You carry the empty ash pan back inside, now the grate in the servants' hall, then the grates in the library, the study, the morning room, the drawing room and the dining room. 14 rooms in this house, 9 of which have fireplaces that burn coal, and you are responsible for 5 of them. Mary is responsible for the others. Upstairs is Mary's territory. You do not go above the first floor before the family is up, which is a rule about access and hierarchy that you understand only partially, and that you are not encouraged to question. You carry the coal scuttle, the paper bag of kindling, the box of matches, and the brush and blacklead in a large wicker basket that also holds a cloth for your knees and a duster for the hearths. The basket is heavy. You carry it up the back stairs. You're not permitted to use the front stairs, which are carpeted and wide and lit in the afternoon by a skylight that fills the whole stairwell with silver light. You're permitted the back stairs, which are narrow and dark and smell of old wood, and the accumulated history of every person who has used them to carry coal and linens and trays of food and buckets of water and chamber pots up and down for the 60 years this house has stood. You are part of that history now, whether you think about it that way or not. The library is the first room, ground floor, back of the house. It is Mr. Harrington's room, the room where he sits most evenings reading or working, which means it has the best fire of any room in the house, because Mr. Harrington notices when the fire isn't right, and he will say so to Mrs. Trent, who will say so to you with a specificity that feels disproportionate until you realise that Mrs. Trent does not actually believe in disproportionate responses, that for her a fire lit wrong is a fire lit wrong, and the scale of the failure is entirely consistent with the clarity of the expectation. You have never had Mr. Harrington complain about his library fire. You will not have him complain about it today. The library is dark and cold. The embers in the grate are grey and dead. You kneel down on your cloth. The flagstone below the hearthrug here is warmer than the kitchen floor, which is relative but notable. You rake the cold ash into the ash pan. You check the grate for anything odd. A piece of coal that didn't burn properly, a deposit of soot that needs clearing, any sign that the chimney isn't drawing right. You've learned to read grates the way a sailor reads weather. The signs are small and specific, and all of them matter. You lay the paper, the kindling, 3 medium coals, match, the fire catches. You watch it for 30 seconds. While you watch it, you notice on the edge of Mr. Harrington's desk a glass with a half-inch of whiskey still in it. He was here late. The glass shouldn't be there. You're not supposed to touch things on the desk. You're also not supposed to leave a dirty glass in the room when you come in to clean it. These 2 rules are technically in direct conflict, and the resolution of that conflict is something you have to navigate without ever asking anyone about it. Because asking would suggest you don't already know, and not knowing is a kind of failure here. You take the glass. You put it outside the library door on the tray you carry for exactly this kind of thing, which you always bring to the early morning rounds because you learned, early, that these rooms contain the evidence of the previous night, and that evidence needs to be removed before the rooms are occupied again. 5 rooms done. You've been moving for 2 hours. Your back hurts in the specific way it hurts at this point in the morning, which is not the acute hurt of injury, but the deep, spreading hurt of effort sustained past the point your body thinks is reasonable. A hurt concentrated between your shoulder blades from carrying the basket, and at your lower back from kneeling and rising over and over across the flagstone floors of rooms that were never designed with your comfort in mind. You go back to the kitchen. At 6:15, Mrs. Dobbins arrives. Mrs. Dobbins is 48 years old. She has been a cook in this house for 11 years. She is a large woman with arms like a blacksmith's, and the exact personal authority of someone who has been in command of a kitchen since she was 18. She wears a dark green dress with a white apron that she puts on when she arrives, and that she keeps spotlessly clean throughout a 12-hour day of cooking, which is something you cannot explain and have stopped trying to. "Ada," she says, before she's removed her coat, "the range." "Lit and drawing, Mrs. Dobbins." She opens the fire door and looks in. She looks at the damper setting. She puts her hand near the hot plate to test the temperature. She says nothing. This is a good sign. When Mrs. Dobbins says nothing, it means the range is correct. When the range is not correct, she says quite a lot. Bessie arrives behind her, already tying her apron. Bessie's job in the morning is the scullery and the breakfast preparation work and carrying things for Mrs. Dobbins and being where she is needed at the moment she's needed, which requires a kind of perpetual vigilance that Bessie has developed into something almost like a 6th sense. You have seen Bessie turn from the sink with a colander before Mrs. Dobbins has finished saying the word colander. "Water on," Mrs. Dobbins says. "Bread from yesterday out for the servants' breakfast. Get the eggs from the larder." She is not talking to you. You are already leaving. Your next job is upstairs. The family does not wake until 8, but the preparations for their waking begin now at 6:30 with you. You carry the first of the hot water cans upstairs at 6:35. The hot water cans are made of copper, with a long narrow spout and a lid and a hinged handle. When full, they hold about 2 gallons of water. 2 gallons of water weighs approximately 20 pounds. You carry 1 can in each hand, which means you're carrying 40 pounds of hot water up 3 flights of stairs. The back stairs. Always the back stairs. The water in the cans makes a sloshing sound as you move. You learn to keep the movement smooth to keep the water from slopping against the sides and cooling too fast. You learn to keep the spout pointing forward so that if water does escape, it doesn't run down the can onto your hand and burn you. You learn this the hard way in your second week. A burn on the back of your right hand that took 3 weeks to fully heal, and that Mrs. Trent looked at and said nothing about, because nothing she could have said would have made it heal faster. The family bedrooms are on the second and third floors. Miss Cecily Harrington's room is on the second floor front of the house. She is 17, 1 year older than you. She has dark hair and a piano in her room, and a collection of small painted birds on a shelf by the window, and a way of leaving things precisely where it will be most inconvenient for the person who has to clean around them. This is not deliberate. She is not unkind. She simply does not think about where she leaves things, because she has never had to. You set the hot water can outside her door. You do not knock. You've been told not to knock, because knocking wakes the family, and the family does not want to be woken. The can appearing outside the door is a signal. This signal is sufficient. The family has always had water appear outside their door, has been aware since childhood of this morning miracle, and does not need to see who carries it or how it arrives. Ideally, they need never think about it at all. This is not metaphor. It is literally your job to be invisible. You carry water to Mrs. Harrington's room, to Mr. Harrington's dressing room, to the guest room, which is currently occupied by Mrs. Harrington's cousin, a Mr. Theodore Graves, who arrived 3 days ago, and who has been, according to Bessie, who has ears that would do credit to a bat, difficult. You learn this about Mr. Graves on your way back down the back stairs from his water delivery when you hear him, through the door, say something about the temperature of the room, and you stop on the stairs because you are not permitted to be in this corridor. And if he opens the door, you will need to explain yourself, and explaining yourself is something you have been trained to do as little as possible. He does not open the door. You breathe again and continue down. This is the thing about the back stairs. They exist precisely in between what the house looks like and what the house is, between the family's morning and the work that makes the morning. Every time you come up these stairs, you're crossing a line that the house pretends doesn't exist. You carry heat and water and freshness from below to above, and you must do it without being seen or heard or acknowledged. And when you reach the back of the corridor and set your cans down, you must slip back behind the door and down before the family's day begins. You are a ghost, a useful ghost. By 7 o'clock you're back in the kitchen. Mrs. Trent arrives at 7. Mrs. Trent is 51 years old. She came to this house when she was 32, having worked her way up through 4 previous positions, and she's been the housekeeper here for 19 years. She's not tall, but she carries herself as if she is, which creates an impression of height that you have found genuinely confusing in retrospect. She has grey hair pinned into a severe structure at the back of her head, and she wears a black dress, and she carries at her waist a ring of keys that is the physical symbol of her authority over every locked cupboard, every storeroom, every household account, and in some structural sense, every person who works in this house beneath Mr. Haynes the butler. She looks at you when she arrives. She does this every morning. It is a look of inventory. Uniform correct, hair under cap correct, no visible filth from the morning fires. She is checking that the morning has happened properly, that you have done your work. She can tell by looking at you whether you have done it, and she has been correct every single time. The morning room fire, she says. Drawing is good, Mrs. Trent. I'll see. She always checks. You have long since stopped finding this a comment on your competence. and have come to understand it simply as Mrs. Trent being Mrs. Trent, which is to say, someone who verifies rather than trusts, because verification is what 19 years of running a house has taught her produces reliable results. The servants' hall breakfast is brief and entirely functional. Bread, dripping, tea. You eat standing up this morning because there is not room at the table yet, which is normal on the busiest mornings, and because you've learned to eat quickly and efficiently regardless of posture, which is a skill you did not have in Lincolnshire, but which London has given you along with blackened knuckles and knees that ache at 5 in the morning. Bessie eats across from you. She has a piece of bread in one hand and is doing something with a saucepan in the other. This is also normal. Mary's ill, Bessie says without any particular emotion. You look at her. She was in the scullery at midnight being sick, Bessie says. Mrs. Trent knows. If Mary is ill, Mary cannot do her rooms this morning. If Mary cannot do her rooms this morning, someone else has to do them. Someone else is, in a house of this size at this staffing level, almost certainly you. You do not say anything. You finish your bread. You drink your tea. Mrs. Trent appears in the doorway of the servants' hall. Ada, Mary's unwell. You'll take her rooms as well as yours today. Yes, Mrs. Trent. The family rooms will need doing before 9. You have until 8:45. 8:45. It is now 7:20. You have an hour and 25 minutes to clean 7 rooms, which is about 12 minutes per room, which is theoretically achievable if every room is in a reasonable state, and you move quickly and do not stop to think about anything at all. You do not say any of this. You say, "Yes, Mrs. Trent." She holds your gaze for a moment, not unkindly. She is doing the same calculation you are, and she knows exactly what it means. "Start upstairs," she says. "Work down." You're already moving. The family rooms upstairs are different from the downstairs rooms in a way that goes beyond the furniture, or the carpets, or the height of the ceilings, though all of those things are different. The family rooms are different because you are in them for a very specific window of time, during the small gap between the family getting up and beginning their morning, and the family potentially needing to return to their rooms for anything. And this window is not guaranteed, and it is not long, and everything you need to do in each room must be done in it. You move differently up here, more quietly, more controlled. You close doors carefully. You set your basket down on a cloth, not on the floor. You move around furniture with a kind of care that comes from having once, in your 3rd week here, caught the edge of a small table with the hip of your basket and sent a glass figurine of a fox tottering to the edge, and caught it with one hand and stood there for 3 full seconds with it in your palm and your heart beating in your ears, before setting it back and being almost sick with relief that you had not broken it. You have not come close to breaking anything since. This is not luck. It is knowledge, the gradual accumulation of where every breakable thing in every room is, held in your body like a set of coordinates, adjusting automatically as the rooms change around it. Miss Cecily's room is first. The bed needs stripping of the top blanket and remaking, the counterpane replaced straight, the pillows plumped and positioned. The water, can you delivered an hour ago, will be gone, taken inside, and the used water set in the basin on the washstand. You empty the basin into your slop pail. You wipe the washstand dry. You check the soap dish, which needs fresh soap today, and you note this on the running list in your head because you will need to bring it from the linen cupboard, and there is a specific size and type of soap for this household that Mrs. Trent keeps in the locked storeroom. The fireplace. You rake, lay, light. It will not get fully going before Miss Cecily returns, but it will have caught enough to be tending when she does. The floor. You sweep from the back to the front, working round the furniture, under the dressing table where hairpins and small pieces of ribbon collect like evidence of a life lived in this space. Across the rug, where a faint impression of yesterday's foot traffic still shows in the pile. You do not look at the things on the dressing table. This is not a written rule. It is an understood one. The personal objects on a family member's dressing table are invisible to you. The bottles of scent, the small cards, the letters. Whatever is there, you clean around it without registering it, because looking at those things is a kind of intrusion that your presence here already is to some extent, and that you compensate for by looking at nothing you do not have to look at. This takes 11 minutes. You leave Miss Cecily's room with it clean and warm and correct, and you move on. Mrs. Harrington's room. Mrs. Harrington is 39. She's a careful woman who leaves her room in a specific state that suggests someone who was trained early to consider the people who would clean up after her. Clothes folded before they are put in the hamper, not thrown, drawers pushed properly shut, shoes set neatly by the wardrobe. You've always moved faster in Mrs. Harrington's room than in any other because it requires less work to bring it back from where she left it. Today there is something on the floor by the bed. A glove. One glove. Dropped and not retrieved. You pick it up. It is pale grey kid leather, softer than anything you've ever owned, with tiny pearl buttons at the wrist. It would cost a domestic servant somewhere close to half a week's wages. It is one of a pair that costs approximately 30 shillings the pair, which you know because you've heard Mrs. Harrington mention this to her cousin's wife, who visited in November, in the context of a conversation about a glove maker in St. James's Street. You set it on the dressing table. You continue. Mr. Harrington's dressing room is the room in this house that takes the most work for its size. It is small, but it requires a particular standard of order that Mr. Harrington enforces indirectly through Mr. Haynes, the butler, who has a formal relationship with the upper floors that you do not have, and who will report to Mrs. Trent if anything is not as it should be. The boot brushes must be clean and set correctly. The shoe trees must be in the shoes, not next to them. The clothes he left out must be removed to the wardrobe. The small collection of personal items on his valet stand must be clean and dust-free and replaced in exactly the order they were in. You have memorized the order. You have memorized it because on your 6th day here, you moved his tobacco pouch from the left side to the right side of the valet stand, and Mr. Haynes mentioned it to Mrs. Trent, and Mrs. Trent mentioned it to you, and the conversation lasted 3 sentences, but contained more information per sentence than anything you have experienced since school. You have not moved the tobacco pouch since. The guest room, Mr. Graves. The guest room is always a risk in a way the family rooms are not. You know the family. You know their patterns, their preferences, their small systems of order. A guest is unknown. A guest might return to their room at any point. A guest has no reason to assume you are operating on a specific schedule. You open the door quietly. The room smells of cigar smoke and something else, a cologne, heavy and slightly sweet. The curtains are half open. Mr. Graves has been up already. The bed is rumpled, but not as someone who just slept in it. The sheets pulled back and twisted in a particular way that says he sat on the edge and dressed there. His things are everywhere. Not everywhere the way careless people leave things, but everywhere the way someone leaves things when they're comfortable with the idea of other people tidying up after them, which is different. His coat is over the chair, his hat on the floor, his case open on the floor with its contents partially removed. A book face down on the bedside table, which you do not close because you were taught not to touch books. A glass the same as the one from the library last night, with the same amber residue in the bottom. You work faster in this room. The awareness that he might come back is a physical thing in your chest, a tightness that quickens your hands. You are stripping the bed when the door opens. Your hands stop. Mr. Graves stands in the doorway. He is a man of perhaps 40, broad-shouldered, fair-haired, going grey at the temples. He's wearing a long coat as if he has just come back from outside, which means he was out early, which means he was not in the library or the morning room where you would have heard him. He looks at you, and then looks at the half-stripped bed, and then looks at you again. "I forgot my hat," he says. You step back from the bed. You step back toward the wall. This is not conscious. It is trained. When a family member or guest enters a room you are cleaning, you step back. You wait. You do not speak unless spoken to. You become, as much as possible, part of the architecture. He walks to where his hat is lying on the floor. He picks it up. He is looking at you with an expression you cannot read, an expression that is neither kind nor unkind, but that contains something evaluative, the look of a person who has noticed something they weren't paying attention to before. "Early work," he says. You do not respond. This is the rule. Responding to comments from guests is a complex territory that Mrs. Trent has outlined in terms that make it clear the territory is complex. A nod is permissible. More than a nod depends on what was said and who said it. He is not asking a question. You nod. He looks at you for one more second. Then he leaves. You stand against the wall for a moment after the door closes. Your heart is doing something unnecessary. Nothing happened. He came for his hat. He left. But the 5 seconds of being looked at, of being noticed, of having your presence acknowledged in a room you are supposed to be invisible in, those 5 seconds sit in you like a weight you will carry through the rest of the morning. You finish the room in 8 minutes. You make the bed tighter than you've ever made a bed. You cannot explain why. You're done with upstairs by 8:35. 10 minutes to spare. You carry your basket back down the back stairs. At the bottom, on the first floor landing, you meet Mary. Mary is grey-faced and hollow-eyed, and still wearing her night things under her morning dress, which she has put on partially wrong, the buttons done incorrectly from the waist down. She's holding the wall. "You didn't have to do my rooms," she says. Her voice is flat. She means, "I would have done them." Mrs. Trent said. Mary looks at you for a moment. "I'd have managed." "I know." You both stand there for a second with the thing that isn't quite being said. "They all right?" she asks. "Yes, straight." She nods. She moves past you toward the back stairs. She's going down to the servants' hall probably, to get tea from Bessie and be looked at by Mrs. Trent and be assessed for whether she is well enough to continue or whether she will be put to bed, which is the outcome she's dreading because going to bed in the middle of a workday has its own set of complications that you both understand without discussing them. You go back to the kitchen. The morning has broken fully above the city. Through the small windows at the top of the kitchen wall, the ones that look out at foot level onto the area outside, you can see shoes, boots, the passing of feet along De Vere Gardens, a boy running with the newspaper, a woman in decent shoes, a householder's wife going somewhere, the base of a lamp post, the grating over the coal cellar of the house across the street. You have spent a great deal of time looking at this view. It is your main view of the outside world on most working days. The kitchen is fully operational now. Mrs. Dobbins has porridge for the servants' breakfast and the family's breakfast being prepared simultaneously. The smell of kippers and toast is coming from the direction of the breakfast room. which means Haynes has been up there with the chafing dishes, and the family will come down to a table that looks as if it maintains itself. Bessie is washing up what is already a full load of pots and pans from the morning's preparation. The scullery sounds like a percussion instrument. You need to eat, and then you need to clean the breakfast room after the family leaves it, and then you need to polish the silver that is on the service list for today, which is a 2-hour job in ordinary circumstances and will take longer today, because Mary's illness means you're also covering the afternoon duties that ordinarily fall to her. You do the calculation. If the family leaves the breakfast room by 9:30, which is typical, and the breakfast room takes 30 minutes to do properly, and if you start on the silver at 10, which means you have the service room to yourself before the preparation for luncheon begins at 11, and if you skip your mid-morning break, which you have done before and will do again, and if nothing unexpected happens, you will be finished with the day's essential tasks by approximately 3 o'clock in the afternoon, at which point you'll have 4 hours before dinner service preparation begins, which is when Mrs. Trent will find additional work for you, which she always does. This is what the day looks like from the inside of it. It looks like a series of calculations about time and sequence, a kind of logistics problem that refreshes itself every hour, that is never fully solved, that requires constant adjustment to account for the things that go wrong, and things always go wrong. Today's wrong thing has been Mary. Tomorrow will be something else. You eat your breakfast. The porridge is thick and salted exactly right, which is Mrs. Dobbin's gift. She cannot give you time or warmth or any of the things the morning has taken from you, but she can give you porridge at the right temperature with the right amount of salt, and you take this for what it is, the silver cleaning. This is the job you do not hate. You would not say you love it, because love seems like a large word for what is still, fundamentally, a repetitive task performed in a cold service room with the smell of chemicals and a view of the coal cellar wall. But there is something in it, something in the process of taking a piece of silver that is grey and dull and tarnished with use, and bringing it back through a specific set of movements to brightness. Something satisfying in the work that knows what it is working toward. The silver lives in the butler's pantry when it is not in use. Today's service list, the list Mrs. Trent has written in the silver book, includes the serving spoons for luncheon service and the sugar basin set, and the small cream jug with the patterned handle, and the 3 serving dishes that will be used for the dinner party that Mrs. Harrington is giving on Thursday. The silver polish is a paste called plate powder. You apply it with a soft cloth, working it into the surface in small circular motions. The tarnish comes away against the cloth in a grey-black residue that is oddly satisfying, the visible evidence of the process working. You buff it back out with a clean cloth, a different motion, lighter, faster. The silver emerges. It really does emerge. That is the right word. It comes back to itself from under the layer of dull grey, as if it has been there all along waiting for this, which it has been. The patterned handle of the cream jug takes the longest. The pattern is a spray of flowers, leaves and petals picked out in relief, and the tarnish collects in every hollow and angle of it, and the polish needs to be worked into those hollows, and then worked back out with a small brush, and then polished with a cloth, and then checked in the light from the window. You hold the cream jug up to the light. The pattern catches it. Every petal and leaf crisp and bright and exactly as the silversmith made it, decades ago. For someone's wedding perhaps, or a significant birthday. A piece bought with money and meaning and now serving its long, quiet life in this household as part of the permanent equipment of good living. You set it down carefully on the baize cloth. Outside the service room door, the house is becoming the house it presents to the world. The family has been at breakfast. You can hear, just barely, the sound of the morning room piano. Miss Cecily practicing her scales, the same sequence ascending and descending, ascending and descending, with the particular mechanical patience of someone fulfilling a daily obligation who would rather be doing literally anything else. D major scale, E major, F sharp minor. You know the order. You've heard it through 3 floors of this house every morning for 6 months. Mrs. Harrington is in the morning room too. You know this because at 10:15 her bell rings in the servants' hall, which means she wants Mrs. Trent, which means Mrs. Trent's footsteps cross the hall above you and go toward the morning room, which means in about 20 minutes Mrs. Trent will come back and tell you, or Bessie or cook, what Mrs. Harrington wants for luncheon or dinner, or whether any additional provisions are needed, because Mrs. Harrington controls the household menus through Mrs. Trent, and Mrs. Trent controls everything that happens below stairs in accordance with what Mrs. Harrington has decided upstairs, and the whole system works because everyone in it understands their position in it exactly. You understand yours. Housemaid lower, wage £12 per annum, duties, fires, hot water, cleaning and maintaining the family and guest bedrooms, the ground floor reception rooms, the backstairs and corridors, assisting with laundry on Mondays, assisting with silver on the service list, assisting with any additional duties as required by Mrs. Trent. The additional duties as required clause is in practice the most significant part of your employment. It is the clause that accounts for today, for Mary's illness, for the extra rooms, for the extra hours. It is also the clause that makes any precise accounting of your working day theoretically impossible, because the additional duties have no fixed limit. You have worked 17-hour days, not often, but enough that when a 17-hour day ends and you climb the back stairs to the attic room and unlace your boots in the dark and lie down on your side of the straw mattress, you have sometimes been so tired that you fell asleep before you finished the thought you were having. This is normal. This is the life. In Lincolnshire, in your village, the women who had gone into service and come back told stories that you passed for their truth when you were 13 and 14. The ones who had done well in service came back with money and references and a particular bearing, upright and controlled, that the village recognised as having been made elsewhere. The ones who had not done well came back with less. Your mother told you what to expect. She had been in service herself for 3 years before she married. She had worked in a farmhouse kitchen in Sleaford that was nothing like this house, that was rough and direct and that paid her in meals and a bed and a small wage that she saved and brought to her marriage. She told you that service was work and that work was not suffering, and that suffering was different from difficulty, and that difficulty was how you learned things you could not learn any other way. She was right. You are learning things you could not have learned in Lincolnshire. You are learning the weight of 20 pounds of water over 3 flights of stairs. You're learning that the difference between a good fire and a bad fire in a drawing room grate comes down to the proportion of paper to kindling to coal, and the angle of the damper and the exact moment you close the fire door. You are learning that silver with a patterned handle takes 3 times as long as plain silver, but looks 3 times as good in candlelight. And that candlelight at a dinner party is what the family's guests remember when they go home and tell people about the Harringtons' table. You are learning that you can work harder than you thought you could, that your body can do things at 5 in the morning that you would not have believed possible at 16, that the kind of competence this house demands is not intelligence exactly, but a particular form of attention, a sustained and minute regard for the specific needs of specific people in specific rooms at specific times, which sounds simple until you're doing it across 14 rooms and 18 people, and the variable hours of a day that has no guaranteed end time. At 11:15, you take the silver back to the butler's pantry. Mr. Haynes is in the pantry. He's a tall man, 60 years old or close to it, with the particular stillness of someone who has learned that controlled movement is more authoritative than animated movement. He looks at the silver when you set it down. He looks at the cream jug. He picks it up. He holds it to the light. He sets it back down. He says, "The handle." You look at the cream jug. You look at the pattern. You can see it now. In the angle of one of the larger leaves, near the base of the handle, a shadow of tarnish you missed. You can see it because he is holding it differently from how you held it, at a slightly different angle, and the light catches the one place where the polish did not fully remove the grey. "Yes, Mr. Haynes," you say. You pick up the cream jug and the cloth, and you go back to the service room and you spend 4 minutes on the leaf at the base of the handle, and you bring it back. He checks it again. He says nothing. He puts it with the others. This is a lesson. It is also simply the morning. Luncheon preparation fills the kitchen from 11 until 1. Mrs. Dobbins commands this period with the exactness of a conductor. The soup to the front of the range, the fish to be dressed at 12:15, the cold collation to be arranged at 12:30 precisely. You carry things. You take the soup tureen from the cupboard where it lives and carry it to the kitchen pass where Haynes will collect it. You carry the bread rolls from the warming oven. You carry the dish of butter from the larder, which is cold. The larder being the coldest room in the house because it is built into the north wall with stone shelves and no fire, designed to stay at the temperature of a cool autumn day year-round, which it does. At 12:45 you sit down for the servants' dinner, which is the main meal of the day below stairs, and which today is a good one because Mrs. Dobbins is in the business of feeding people, regardless of circumstance, and today's leftover stew from the previous evening is thick with vegetables and has a good amount of meat in it. The servants' hall at dinner is a specific social system, ordered by hierarchy in a way that is formal enough that you're always aware of it. Mr. Haynes sits at the head of the table. Mrs. Trent sits opposite him. Mrs. Dobbins sits to Mr. Haynes's right because cook is the third in the house hierarchy, below the butler and housekeeper but above the upper maids. You sit below the salt, which is not a metaphor but is literally your position relative to the salt cellar that sits in the middle of the table and marks the division between upper and lower servants. Mary, still grey but upright and present, sits across from you. Bessie sits next to you. At the far end of the table, Thomas the hall boy, who is 14 and in his first position and who's been dropping things regularly since he arrived in December. The conversation at dinner is managed by Mr. Haynes in the way all things related to the upper servants are managed, through his willingness to speak and his equal ability to make clear with very little visible effort when someone else should stop. Today the conversation is brief. There is an awareness in the room of Mary's illness and the redistribution of work it has caused, and this awareness sits on the meal like a fine layer of something that nobody mentions but everyone can taste. Mrs. Trent looks at Mary once during the soup course. Mary does not return the look. She eats carefully, as someone eats when they are not well and are eating anyway, because the alternative is to admit they are not well, which has consequences she has calculated and found unacceptable. You eat your stew, You eat your bread. The stew is very good. You note this internally, the way you have trained yourself to note the things that are good in the day, because there are always things that are good in the day, and noting them takes no time and uses no energy, and gives you something to set against the rest of it. After dinner, the afternoon rooms, the drawing room and the dining room are your largest jobs. These are the rooms the family uses in the evening, which means they need to be in their best state by late afternoon, and reaching that state from their current state is a multi-stage process. The drawing room first. The drawing room is on the ground floor, front of the house. It faces De Vere Gardens and its 3 large windows let in the afternoon, a quality of light that even you, even through the specific lens of someone who is here to clean it, can recognize as beautiful. The light comes in at an angle in February that hits the surfaces differently from the morning, finding things to illuminate that the morning misses. The gilt on the frame of the largest painting, the cut glass of the decanters on the side table, the particular gloss on the back of the sofa that Mrs. Dobbins has polished with beeswax every Friday for 11 years. The drawing room takes 3 passes. First the grate. You rake the morning's ash, lay a fresh fire ready to be lit before the family comes in at 4. Then the surfaces, dusting with the clean cloth, which must be worked from the top of the room down, from the cornices to the mantelpiece to the tables to the skirting boards, so that what falls from higher surfaces lands on lower ones that you have not yet cleaned, never the other way around. Then the floor, the rugs beaten and replaced straight, the wood floor at the edges swept and then wiped with the damp cloth that picks up what the dry sweep misses. You do this with the systematic care that Mrs. Trent inspects for, moving around the room in a pattern that your body has memorized even though you could not describe it in sequence. Your hands know the room. They know which surfaces have ornaments that need lifting and replacing. They know the gap under the sofa that the dust collects in, and that is missed by the mop if you don't get down on your knees and reach in with the duster. They know the windowsill that rattles slightly in a strong wind, and that always has a thin line of soot on it from the gap in the glazing. You spend 40 minutes in the drawing room. In 40 minutes you do not sit down. You do not use the sofa for anything except as an object to clean around. You do not touch the books or the papers or the small framed photographs on the piano. You do not look out of the windows at the street for more than a second, because looking out windows is something you are in a room to do your work in, not to look out of. This is a rule that nobody stated explicitly. It is a rule you inferred from the way Mrs. Trent once paused, very briefly, when she came in to check a room and found you looking at something outside. She said nothing, but you knew. The dining room takes longer because the table must be set for dinner as well as cleaned. And setting the table for dinner is not your primary skill. It is Haynes's territory and Haynes's standards. But when Haynes is occupied with the family and the afternoon preparation for the dining table falls to you, you must meet his standards anyway, because the dining table is one of the things that will be noticed. Everything that will be noticed is equally important. The fire, the silver, the dining table, the hot water cans, the bed made without a wrinkle. These are all the same thing, variations on the same thing, the thing that this house is, which is the thing you are employed to maintain. By 3:15, the rooms are done. You're in the back passage with your basket. The duster cloths damp with the work of the day, your knees announcing themselves with the quiet persistence they have had all morning, your back having an opinion that you are not listening to. Mrs. Trent appears at the end of the passage. Ada. Yes, Mrs. Trent. Mrs. Harrington's dressing room needs the wardrobe aired. She has guests for dinner Thursday and she wants the green dress looked over. The green dress is a dinner dress, silk with a lot of fabric in the skirt and a beaded bodice that you're not to touch with bare hands, which means cloth over your fingers when you handle it, which means extra care at the beading where the backing has loosened slightly in one place, and you've been asked before to note it and not to tug it, and to tell Mrs. Trent if it gets worse. And the linen press needs turning. The monogram set is for Thursday. The linen press is a device for pressing flat linens without an iron, by rolling them between wooden boards under tension, a slow process that produces a smoothness no iron can match. The monogrammed set is the best table linen in the house. The set that comes out for dinner parties, with the Harrington initials in each corner worked in a white-on-white embroidery, so fine it reads as texture rather than design in the candlelight. Yes, Mrs. Trent. And the coal cellar needs a count for tomorrow's delivery. The coal cellar is counted by volume, roughly, using a bucket you fill and tip to see how many full buckets remain in the bin. It takes about 10 minutes. It is cold. You have done it before. Yes, Mrs. Trent. You look at the afternoon ahead. The green dress, the linen press, the coal cellar. These things will take you to 5 o'clock, at which point the final sequence of the day begins. The evening fires, the hot water again for the family's evening dress, the lamps trimmed and lit, the final preparation of the dining table with Haynes, and then dinner service, which runs from 7 until 10 or 11, and during which your job is to be available in the back passage for anything that is needed without appearing in the dining room itself, which is Haynes's space. After dinner, the clearing up, the washing, the dousing of the fires, the last walk through the family rooms to check. Then up the back stairs, unlace the boots, bed. Total time awake, approximately 17 to 18 hours. Total time moving, 15. You've been doing this for 6 months. There is something you have noticed, not today, but over time. A slow recognition of something that nobody told you was coming. When you arrived here in August, the house was something you moved through carefully, something you were always slightly afraid of, something that had rules you were learning and standards you were reaching toward, and people whose authority over you was absolute in a way you felt physically, in the way you positioned yourself in rooms, and the way you lowered your voice when you passed certain doors, and the way you moved more quickly when anyone of seniority was nearby. You still feel all of this. You're still afraid, in the low constant way that is not panic, but is alertness, the alertness of someone who knows what the consequences of error are and does not want them. But something else has happened alongside it. Something slower. You know this house now. You know it the way you knew the fields around your village in Lincolnshire. Not as a landscape you observe, but as a territory you inhabit, that has a relationship with your body, that you navigate by a kind of knowledge that is not in your head, but in your hands and your feet and your back. You know where the floor creaks on the second floor corridor and how to step around it. You know the exact amount of coal that the library grate burns in one morning versus the drawing room grate, and the difference in their chimneys that accounts for it. You know the rhythm of Mrs. Harrington's mornings and the rhythm of Mr. Harrington's evenings, and the particular quality of attention with which Mrs. Trent looks at any surface she's about to inspect. You know this house. That knowledge is yours. It belongs to you in the same way your wages belong to you, which is to say, entirely without caveat, regardless of what they do with the thing your labour produces. The green dress hangs in Mrs. Harrington's wardrobe on a shaped form of compressed cotton that keeps the shoulders right. You carry it carefully to the dressing room window and examine it in the light, turning it slowly, looking for the place the beading has loosened. You find it. A half-inch section near the left shoulder where 3 small seed pearls have come off their backing thread and are held now only by the tension of the fabric against them. A breath of pressure would lose them. You note it mentally. You will tell Mrs. Trent. This will become probably a task for the seamstress who comes on Tuesdays, and the seamstress will fix the beading and the dress will be perfect for Thursday, and Mrs. Harrington's guest will admire the beaded bodice, and no part of that chain of events will include your name. This is normal. This is the life. You hang the dress back on its form. You go to the linen press. The linen press is in the linen cupboard on the first floor, a wide, shallow room lined with shelves smelling of lavender and the particular freshness of well-aired cotton. The press itself is a wooden frame with 2 flat boards and a central screw mechanism that you wind down to apply pressure. The tablecloth first. You fold it into thirds lengthways, lay it between the boards, wind the screw down to resistance, check that the fold is straight. Then you will leave it for an hour before releasing and turning it to press the other face. The tablecloth is 10 feet long and made of a damask linen woven with a pattern of scrolling leaves that only appears fully when the cloth is pressed perfectly flat. When it is on the dinner table with the candlelight on it and the silver placed correctly and the glasses catching the light, it is one of the most beautiful things you have seen in your life. You've seen it only once from the back passage, through the gap in the door that you stand beside when the dinner service is running and you're waiting to be called for anything. Through that gap, for perhaps 30 seconds, you saw the table as the family sees it, as the guests see it, the cloth spread, the silver placed, the flowers in the epergne, the candles lit. You saw it the way you might see a painting you've walked past the back of for months, suddenly visible from the front, whole. The thing it actually is. It was magnificent. You wind the linen press down to the right tension and leave it. The coal cellar is cold and dark, and the count comes out to approximately 8 full buckets, which is 2 fewer than last time and means the delivery tomorrow is slightly more urgent than you thought. You note it on the small piece of paper you carry for this purpose. In the handwriting you've been improving slowly over the past year because your mother said clear writing was a practical skill, and she was right. 8 buckets. You bring the note to Mrs. Trent. She takes it without comment. She already knew, probably. She knows the burn rate of every fire in the house. She's known it for 19 years. The coal delivery will arrive tomorrow at 8 in the morning through the pavement hatch, with the noise that will pass through every floor of the house and that the family has learned to not hear. At 5 o'clock, the evening sequence begins. The evening fires are quicker than the morning fires because you're lighting them in already. Warm rooms, in grates you cleaned and laid yourself this morning, and the kindling catches faster in a room that is not down to the temperature of the February street. The drawing room fire, the dining room fire, the library fire, all 3 going within 20 minutes. You carry the evening hot water cans up at 5:30. 40 pounds of hot water in your hands. Up the back stairs in the dark. You set them outside the family's doors. You do not knock. You go back down. At 5:50, from upstairs somewhere, a bell rings. Then another. The bells are on a board in the servants' hall labelled by room. You do not have to see the board. You learn the bells by ear. The drawing room bell has a slightly different note from the morning room bell, both of which are distinct from the dinner gong that Haynes strikes at 7:30, with a formality that you can feel through the floorboards. The 5:50 bell is from Mr. Harrington's dressing room. His valet, who comes in the evenings to help him dress, is not here yet, which means this bell is for Haynes or for the house itself, which means in practice it often means one of the upper maids, which is Mary, which tonight is you. You go upstairs. You knock at the dressing room door. Come. Mr. Harrington is standing at his washstand in his shirt sleeves. He is a compact, precise man with iron-grey hair and the particular quality of self-possession that comes with money and the long habit of being served well. He is holding his collar stud and looking at the silver collar box on the washstand, which is open and which does not appear to contain the thing he wants. The other collar, he says. You're not his valet. You do not know which collar he means specifically. You're not certain what the other collar means in the context of a wardrobe that you have cleaned around but not managed. You know that in the drawer to the left of the washstand there is a tray with 4 collar studs, and that in the wardrobe there are collars arranged in a particular order that his valet understands and that you are not supposed to disturb. Mr. Harrington's valet is expected at 6, sir, you say. He looks at you. There is no irritation in it, just appraisal. The starched collar, he says, in the wardrobe, 2nd shelf from the top, the right side. You open the wardrobe. The collars are wrapped in tissue paper on the shelf he described. The starched ones have a different feel to them even through the tissue, a stiffness that is immediately legible. You bring him the starched collar. You place it on the washstand at a distance that is respectful, that does not intrude. Thank you, he says. He has said thank you to you approximately 3 times in 6 months. Each time something small happens in you, a small warmth that you recognize as the response to being acknowledged, which you note and do not build on, because building on it would mean needing it, and needing it in this specific context is a feeling with nowhere to go. You leave the dressing room, you close the door softly, you stand on the landing for 1 second. The back stairs are to your left. The family staircase is in front of you, the wide carpeted staircase with a skylight above it that is blue-grey with the February evening. You take the back stairs, dinner at 7:30. From the back passage through the gap in the door, you can see the table when Haynes opens the dining room from his side to bring in the first course. The cloth you pressed today, the tablecloth with the scrolling leaves that you folded and wound into the press this afternoon, is on the table. It lies flat and brilliant white in the candlelight, and the pattern in the weave is fully visible now, every leaf and scroll sharp, the cloth pressed to the exact smoothness that the process requires. You pressed it to this. Your hands, your 40 minutes at the linen press, your attention to the fold and the screw tension and the direction of the grain. That is what is on the table right now. Mrs. Harrington's dinner dress, the blue silk that she wore tonight instead of the green because the green is for Thursday, catches the candlelight differently from the green. She is at the head of the table from your viewpoint, her back slightly to you, and you can see the way she sits, which is the kind of upright that is not effort but habit, the posture of someone who has been told since childhood that their bearing matters. Mr. Graves is there. He is animated, speaking, gesturing. He is the kind of person who takes up more conversational space than his size requires, and from here you can see the table shift slightly toward his energy, even from people who are not directly speaking to him. Miss Cecily is between her father and a young man you do not recognize. Probably someone's son brought for the evening, and she is being politely interested in whatever the young man is saying, while her eyes occasionally go to somewhere in the middle distance that is not the dining room. This is the life you are maintaining. This precise scene, the candlelight and the silver and the table linen and the carefully prepared dishes, that Mrs. Dobbins has been making since this morning, and the warmth in the room from the fire you lit at 5 o'clock. You made this possible. Every fire you lit this morning, and every can of water you carried, and every surface you cleaned, and every piece of silver you polished, all of it is a part of the thing currently happening in that dining room, and none of them will think about it once. Not during dinner, not after, not tomorrow. This is not something you're supposed to feel strongly about. You were not hired to feel strongly about it. You were hired to do the work. You do the work. Haynes comes back to the pass. "The soup tureen," he says. "It is slightly too cool. He needs it returned to the range for 3 minutes. You take it. You carry it back to the kitchen. You stand at the range with it for 3 minutes. You carry it back. This is what the dinner service looks like from your side. Walking, carrying, waiting, walking." By 9:45 the family has moved from the dining room to the drawing room for coffee, which means the dining room can be cleared, which means your last movement of the day begins. The dishes come down, the glasses come down, the serving pieces come down. The tablecloth is removed and folded and taken to the linen room. The candles are doused. The fire is banked to last through the night. The room is checked. By 10:15, the kitchen is washing up. Mrs. Dobbins has gone. Bessie is at the sink with Thomas beside her. You're carrying the last of the serving dishes from the dining room down the back stairs. The back stairs, again, still, always. By 11, the house is settling. The family has retired. The lights are being extinguished one by one, and you can hear this as a sequence of small footstep sounds above you as Haynes makes his final round. The fire in the drawing room is banked. The gas lamps on the front of the house are still lit, as they are every night until 2 in the morning when the lamplighter makes his round. But in here the lamps are going out. Mrs. Trent does the final round of the servants' quarters herself. She knocks once on the attic room door at 11:30, which means lights out, which means enough. You're already in bed when she knocks. Bessie is already asleep. You lie on your back on the straw mattress with the thin blanket over you, and the February cold doing what it does in the attic in February, which is everything it can. Your hands rest on top of the blanket. They are rough. They have been rough for 6 months, and they will get rougher. You can feel the specific roughness with one hand touching the other. The texture of skin that has been in contact with cold water and coal dust and plate polish and blacklead every day for half a year. Your mother's hands are like this. Her mother's hands were like this. These hands run in your family the way eyes run in some families, passed down through the women who did the same kind of work. You turn on your side. Outside, somewhere close, a dog is barking. 2 streets away, you would guess, in the mews behind the grander houses to the north, where the horses are stabled. Then a cart going somewhere, which means the tradesmen's deliveries have started, the overnight people beginning the work that feeds into tomorrow's morning, the chain of labour that never stops, that is always running just ahead of and just behind the specific moment you occupy. You think about the linens on the dinner table. You think about the cream jug with the patterned handle, the leaf polished in the angle between the stem and the base until it was as bright as the day it was made. You think about Mr. Harrington saying thank you and the quality of the 2 seconds before he said it. The 2 seconds in which you were visible in that room. A person with a name in a room that needed something. Not a ghost, not an absence, but a person. These are small things. You know they are small things. You know that £13 a year after your keep is not a great wage, and that the rough hands you will have for the rest of your life are a permanent record of this specific period in a way that other people's lives are not. And you know that the house you work in will run its dinner parties and press its linens and polish its silver without any particular record of who did it. You know all of this, but you also know you can light a fire in 7 minutes in a cold room before 5 in the morning. You know the weight of hot water and how to carry it. You know the pattern on a silver cream jug by feel. You know the back stairs of this house in total darkness at the full speed of someone who belongs here. You know things. This city, this house, this year has given you this. The specific competence of someone who does hard things every day. The kind of knowledge that is in the body and not just the mind. The particular confidence of a person who knows, even without being able to prove it. Even without anyone acknowledging it, that they can do the work. You can do the work. The February cold settles around the attic room. Outside, London moves through its night-time, its watermen tying up their boats, its coffee houses beginning to close, its servants settling into the same thin sleep you are settling into. The sleep that is never quite enough. But that is what you have. And that is, for right now, sufficient. Your body lets go of the day, not all at once, slowly the way a fist unclenches. The specific ache in your back gentles. Your hands stop knowing what they're doing. The sounds of the house and the sounds of the street recede into something ambient, into the general sound of a city that does not stop but that allows you, for a few hours, not to be part of it. Tomorrow, 4:30, the alarm clock on the wooden chair, the range, the fires, the water, the same and not the same, because every day in this house is built from the same components arranged differently, the same rooms requiring the same care but never requiring exactly the same thing twice, the work always including some variant, some guest bell or broken hem or inspection that finds a spot you missed. Some small instruction from Mrs. Trent that redirects the afternoon. Some moment in the back passage by the dining room door where you see the family at their table and understand again what you are doing and why it matters, even if it matters entirely without your name attached to it. You sink. The sounds of London are very far away now. The dog, the cart, the faint ring of a bell somewhere in the city, one of the dozens of church bells that mark the hours through the night, the infrastructure of time that has been running over this city for centuries, ringing the same hours over different people in different versions of the same rooms, the same work, the same cold and the same brief warm sleep at the end of it. Someone before you slept in this attic, someone before her. The mattress has a particular depression that was not made by you, a shape that existed when you arrived and that says someone was here, someone worked this house, someone carried the coal and lit the fires and carried the water and polished the silver and came up these stairs at the end of it. And then they left, or the house changed around them, or they married, or they took another position, or they went home, or they grew old, or they grew into something else. And someone else came and learned the back stairs and the alarm clock in the morning and did it all again. You are that person now, not the same person. Yourself. Ada Marsh, 16, from Lincolnshire, 6 months in, knees that ache, hands that are rough, fires that draw right every morning. You are here. That is enough. In a house on De Vere Gardens in Belgravia, in the coldest part of the February night, in an attic room above 14 people and below the sleeping family, you let the day dissolve. The clock on the wooden chair is not yet ticking toward 4:30. It is still many hours away. For now there is only the warmth under the thin blanket, the slow breathing of Bessie on the other side of the mattress, the faint sounds of a city making its way through the dark. Decades from now, This house will stand or it will not stand. The family will change or the family will be gone. The back stairs will be used for something else, or the staircase itself will be removed in one of the many iterations of this building's life that you cannot imagine because you are 16 and the future is as dark as the room around you. The coal cellar will not need counting. The silver will pass into other hands. The range will be replaced by something you could not describe. But right now, on this night, in this bed, in this city, you, your hands on the blanket, your lungs rising and falling, the clock not yet ticking. Let it come. Let the sleep come the way it came for everyone who slept in this attic before you. The housemaids and the kitchen maids and the girls from the country who came to London with letters and a change of clothes and learned the back stairs and the fires and the weight of water and went to sleep in February in an attic room with a clock on a wooden chair. Let the sounds of the house go. Let the sounds of the city go. Let your back stop talking. Let your hands rest. You have done the work. The work will wait for tomorrow. Tonight is yours. This sleep is yours. This darkness, this rest, this brief undoing of everything the day required. Yours. Let the clock wait. Let the morning wait. Let London wait. You have earned this. All of it. Every quiet hour of it. The last thing you are aware of is the very faint smell of coal smoke and beeswax that is the smell of this house, of the work of this house, of the substance of the life you are in the middle of learning, rising and falling with your own breath. And then the darkness, and then nothing but rest, and then the long, still drop into sleep. That is the only true privacy you have, the one place in this house that belongs entirely to you, where no bell rings and no inspection comes and no fire needs lighting and the back stairs are miles away. Sleep, just sleep. Good night. But before the sleep takes you fully, there is a moment, a suspended moment between waking and not, where the day replays itself in fragments, not in order, not making any particular argument, just passing through the way water passes through a cloth. The ember in Mr. Harrington's grate when you first raked it, the specific grey of cold ash, the weight of the water cans on the third-floor landing, Mr. Graves' face when he found you in his room, the cream jug held up to the light, Mary's face on the back stairs, grey and determined, the table linen through the gap in the door, Bessie eating and working at the same time with the particular efficiency of someone who has never thought to do it differently. All of it just passing through, not weighing anything, just the day, going somewhere else now, out of you, done. Tomorrow the range again, the coal again, the stairs again. But right now, the moment just before sleep, which is the same in this attic room in Belgravia in 1888, as it is in every room where someone exhausted lies down at the end of a long day and lets their mind go, which is to say, it is the same as it has always been, and will always be. The mind releasing its grip on the specific day and falling back into something older and simpler and more permanent than any one day could be. You are asleep before you know you are asleep. This is the only way it ever happens. The February night moves over London. The gas lamps burn on De Vere Gardens. The houses stand side by side in their white stucco regularity, each one containing its version of this story, its downstairs world of coal and water and early mornings, running beneath the upstairs world of silk and candlelight and dinner parties, in the same way that the foundations of the houses run beneath their gleaming facades, invisible, essential, the thing without which none of the rest of it stands. In the morning your alarm will go off at 4:37 and Bessie will already be awake, and the range will need you, and the fires will need you, and the house will need you. But that is the morning, That is tomorrow. That is a whole other day waiting to happen, unchanged and complete. The same components arranged fresh, the same work demanding the same attention, the same specific knowledge of fires and water and silver, and the back stairs in the dark. Right now you are a girl asleep in February in London. You're 16 and your hands are rough and your knees remember the flagstones, and somewhere in the city below you a clock is ticking toward morning. Not yet. Not quite yet. Good night. And now, since you're not going anywhere and the room is dark and the blanket is thin but adequate, and Bessie's breathing is the steadiest sound in the world, let's go back to the beginning of the day. Not because the day is not finished. It is finished, but because there are things in it worth sitting with, things that pass too fast to feel in the moment they happened, things that deserve a second look before the sleep takes them. The coal. You have not thought enough about the coal. It comes twice a week through the pavement hatch and falls into the bin, and you scoop it out and carry it in the scuttle, and feed it into the range and into the grates, and it burns and becomes the heat that becomes the warm rooms and the hot water and the cooked food, and then it becomes ash that you carry outside to the bin in the cold. This is the circuit of it. This is what coal does in a Victorian townhouse in February. But consider the coal itself, where it came from. It came from Wales, most likely, or from the north of England, Yorkshire or Durham, from a mine that sits 1,000 feet below a field or a town above ground, where the families of the men who mine it live in rows of houses that are nothing like De Vere Gardens, but that are also warm in winter, warmed by the coal the men pull out of the ground at the price of their own bodies. The miners' hands are as black as yours from the coal dust, and they go home each evening with the coal in their skin in a way that does not wash out either. So that the hands of a man who has mined for 20 years and the hands of a girl who has been a housemaid for 6 months share this in common. The material of the work is literally in the skin, incorporated, indistinguishable from the person. The coal leaves the mines on carts that become trains that arrive in London, at the coal wharves on the river or the canal, where other men with black hands unload it into barges that carry it to the merchants' yards, where other men load it onto carts that make their way through the streets of London twice a week to the houses on De Vere Gardens and the other streets like it, and a boy drives the cart and a man tips the coal through the hatch in the pavement, and it falls into the bin in the dark, and you scoop it out at 5 in the morning. This chain from the mine to the bin to your hands, you have never thought about it. You have never had occasion to think about it. You lift the coal, you carry the scuttle, you feed the fire, and the fire is what matters to you and what you're responsible for, not the entire history of the thing that burns. But it is there. It is always there. The full history of every object in this house, the silver polish today and the linen pressed and the beeswax on the furniture and the butter in the larder, all of it arrived here through a chain of human effort that is invisible. In the same way you are invisible. That makes possible the thing you see without making itself seen. You are part of that chain, at this particular link. When you think about it from that angle, from the angle of the chain rather than the single link, the work is immense. Not your work specifically, the whole work, the collective labour of everyone involved in every object in this house, from its foundations to its roof, from the coal in the cellar to the silk in Mrs. Harrington's wardrobe. The scale of it is genuinely staggering if you stop to stagger at it. You don't usually stop to stagger at it. There isn't time, but in the moment before sleep with the day done and the blanket over you, you can let the stagger happen. You can let the full weight of what it is to live in the middle of that chain, to be the specific human link between the coal bin and the warm room, to be the hands that make the chain work at this point, feel like what it is for a moment before the sleep takes it. It is a lot. It is genuinely a lot. It has always been a lot, and the people who did it before you knew it, in the same wordless bodily way you know it, and they carried it in their hands and their backs in their early mornings, and they went to sleep in the same darkness, and they were fine. You're also fine. Difficult is not the same as suffering. Suffering is different. You know this because your mother told you, and because you have noticed in 6 months here that the difficult days, the ones with the 17-hour work and Mary ill and the extra rooms and Mr. Graves coming back for his hat, those days end the same way as the easier days, with you in this bed, in this dark, with the work done and the house correct and the morning still a few hours away. The difficult days do not break you. They just leave a different residue when they're done. Today's residue, the satisfying kind. The kind that comes from having done more than you thought you would have to, and having done it properly and being here now, in the evidence of that. Mrs. Trent said nothing to you this evening. Not a word of criticism or correction. After 11 hours of double duties, having cleaned 7 rooms and polished the silver and pressed the table linen and counted the coal and carried the water twice and done the evening round and the dinner service, Mrs. Trent said nothing. In Mrs. Trent's language, that is its own kind of acknowledgement, possibly the highest kind she gives. She does not hand out praise. Praise is for people who need to be told they are doing well. The standards are the standards, and meeting them is expected, and failure to meet them is what gets a response, and the silence after a day when the standards were met is the response to meeting the standards. You know this. You have known it for at least 3 months. You have stopped waiting for something different. Miss Cecily said something today, though. You nearly forgot. In the morning, in the corridor on the 2nd floor, when you were coming back from Mr. Harrington's dressing room, and she was coming out of her own room, she nearly walked into you. She stopped. She looked at you. She said, "Oh, I'm sorry." Not because she'd done anything wrong. She was apologizing for the near collision, for not having seen you, for the social awkwardness of almost walking into the person who cleaned her grate. "Not at all, Miss Cecily," you said. And she looked at you for a moment with a look you could not interpret, and went to the stairs. She apologized to you. You have been here 6 months, and this was the first time someone in the family said sorry to you for anything. It was a small thing, an accidental thing. But it sits in you somewhere that is distinct from where the other interactions sit, because the other interactions have a clear social logic. Mr. Harrington thanking you for the collar was a transaction, courtesy as management, the thank you that keeps the servant performing well. Mrs. Trent's silences are evaluation. Even Haynes's corrections are just the mechanism of the house operating correctly. Miss Cecily's apology was something else, something slightly outside the mechanism, something that came from wherever people come from when they are momentarily not performing their social role and are just people. She's 17. She was born in this house. She has never carried a coal scuttle. She does not know what the backstairs feel like at 5 in the morning. She plays her scales at 10 o'clock and goes to parties in the evening, and has a green silk dress with seed pearl beading that she will wear on Thursday to the dinner party, at which your pressed tablecloth will be on the table. And she almost walked into you in the corridor and said she was sorry. These are the things that make a day a specific day, and not just a day. The small collisions and corrections and silences and acknowledgements that give the routine its texture, the range and the silver and the water and the stairs. Those are the structure, but the day's texture is in the smaller things, The glove on the floor and the tarnish in the leaf pattern and the bell from Mr. Harrington's dressing room and the brief moment of being seen by Mr. Graves, unexpected in his room. You are in the middle of a life. That sounds like an obvious thing. But there is a version of this work, a version you can see from the inside of the day when the day is hard and the morning started before the light and the evening is not ending, and your back hurts and your knees hurt and the coal scuttle wants refilling. There is a version where this work is all there is, where it fills everything, where the house is the whole world and you are the mechanism that runs it, and there is nothing outside of that. That version is not true. You know it is not true because you have a mother in Lincolnshire who is writing a letter that will arrive on Thursday, and that you will read on Sunday in the servants' hall, with the noise of the kitchen around you, and the familiar shape of her handwriting making everything briefly very large and very immediate and very far from De Vere Gardens. You know it is not true, because you have hands that are becoming something, that are changing into the hands of a person who knows how to do specific things, and that is a process that will continue and will end somewhere that is not this attic room in this house, in this year. You are 16. You are at the beginning. The beginning is hard in the particular way that beginnings are. All new, all unfamiliar, all requiring the sustained attention of someone who does not yet have the habit of the thing they're doing. After the habit comes, after the back stairs are in your body and the fires are in your hands and the house is a known quantity rather than a system to decode, then the difficulty will change shape. It will not go away, but it will be a different kind of difficulty. You are 6 months into learning this. You are still in the beginning. The sleep is very close now. You can feel it the way you feel the warmth of a fire, before you're quite close enough to feel the warmth of a fire. Present, approaching, something you are moving toward without moving. Bessie is deep asleep. You can hear her breathing from across the mattress, slow and regular. The breathing of someone who has been doing this long enough that even the alarm at 4:30 does not give her the anticipatory wakefulness it gives you. She simply sleeps until the clock goes off, and then she wakes up. You have not yet achieved this. Your body is still slightly afraid of the morning, still keeping a part of itself awake to watch for the clock, still not fully trusting that it will go off in time, and that you will hear it, and that the house will not punish you for missing a fire or a water can. Eventually you will trust the clock. Eventually you will sleep the way Bessie sleeps. Even your body will learn, given enough mornings of the clock going off exactly when it was supposed to, that the morning can be trusted to arrive correctly. Give it time. Give everything time. The city outside your window is London in 1888. And it is vast, and it is cold, and it is full of people in the same state you're in, almost asleep, the day almost over, the morning not yet arrived. The watermen are done with the river until first light. The coffee houses are closing. The gin shops, the ones in the rougher neighbourhoods south of the river and east, are still serving the people who are beyond the point of the evening being over, for whom the evening will not be over until it has consumed everything. But here, on De Vere Gardens, quiet. The gas lamps making their amber circles on the street. The horses in the mews shifting in their sleep. The house standing in its white stucco solidity, its brass knocker dark in the February night, its fires banked, its family asleep, its servants asleep, or very nearly. Tomorrow the coal comes, tomorrow the range again, tomorrow the back stairs, but tomorrow is not now. Tomorrow has its own alarm clock and its own scuttle, and its own round of fires and its own particular shape that you cannot yet see, because it has not yet happened, and will not look exactly like today when it does. Now is just now. The room is just the room. Your body is just your body, honest about what the day cost it, ready for the night to pay some of that back. Let it. Let the night do its work. You have done yours. Down through the floors of the house, in the kitchen that is now dark and banked and cooling, the range is holding its heat. The coals you laid this morning are still giving off the last of their warmth, the fire reduced now to a steady breath of heat, rather than the active burning of the working hours, the range in its resting state, waiting for 5 o'clock. You built that fire. Your paper and your kindling and your medium coals, your careful hand on the damper, your 30 seconds watching the catch before you stood up. That fire is still running on what you gave it this morning. Something you did at 5 o'clock this morning is still warm at 11 o'clock tonight. That is not nothing. That is actually something. The room is so dark now that dark seems like the wrong word. It is complete. It is simply the absence of any light. The attic room sealed against the city by the smallness of its window, and the February clouds over the moon, and the gas lamp on the street below, whose angle does not reach this high. In this dark, in this city, in this house, you are warm enough, you are fed enough, you are safe enough. You have the work and the knowledge the work has given you, and the morning where you will use both again. That is more than enough. That is a life. Let the clock wait. Let the morning wait. Let the range wait cold for you. Let the back stairs wait dark. Let the fires wait unlit. Let everything that needs you wait until 4:37, which is a number of hours away that your body already knows and is already counting down to in the part of itself that will wake you before the alarm if necessary, the part that is always slightly watching, that has been watching since your first week here when you overslept by 12 minutes and arrived at the range at 5:27 instead of 5:15, and the fire was late, and Mrs. Dobbin said nothing, and that silence was its own kind of clock, ticking in you since then, keeping you here. But that clock can be quiet now. That clock can sleep too. All of it can rest. The knowledge and the counting and the watching, the hands that know the weight of the scuttle and the feel of the silver and the distance between the second and third floor landings on the back stairs in the dark. All of it can put itself down for a few hours. You're putting it down, it is put down, you are asleep. Good night. There are things about this work that you only understand by doing them for long enough that the understanding becomes physical, that it stops being a piece of information and becomes instead a way your body moves through the world. Take the stairs. The back stairs of a house like this are not designed for the people who use them. They were designed so that the people who use them would not be noticed by the people who do not use them, which is a slightly different engineering brief. The carpeted staircase in the front of the house is wide and well lit, and has a banister at a comfortable height, and rises at a gradient calculated for the comfort of people who are not carrying anything. The back stairs are narrow, and the banister is placed slightly too high for carrying, because carrying was not considered in its design. The rise of each step is steeper than the front stair. The treads are shorter. The whole thing was built to compress the back-of-house traffic into the minimum possible space, which is a different kind of architecture from the front-of-house architecture, and which is built on a fundamentally different assumption about the people in it, which is that they do not need comfort, only passage. You have grown strong enough that the back stairs barely register as an effort anymore. In August, your first month, your thighs burned going up the stairs with the full coal scuttles. Your breathing was audible by the second floor. You were slower than you needed to be, and Haynes, passing the foot of the stairs once when you were coming down, had looked up at you with an expression that contained, without specifying it, the information that you needed to be faster. You are faster now. Your legs are different legs than the ones you arrived with. The muscles in your thighs and calves, the muscles that were built in Lincolnshire by farm work and walking, and were not designed for stairs, have been redesigned by 6 months of the back stairs with the coal scuttles and the water cans. You can go up 3 flights with 40 pounds of hot water and arrive at the top not breathless but simply arrived, your body having done the thing it does a dozen times a day without dramatic announcement. This is your body becoming the work. You have noticed it in other places too. Your hands, which were rough when you arrived because of the farm work and the helping with the laundry, are differently rough now. The roughness is in different places, concentrated in the pads of your fingers and across the back of your hand, from the cold water and the great brush, rather than in the web between thumb and forefinger, where the laundry mangle puts it. Different work, different hands. Your hands are becoming the hands of a housemaid, not the hands you were born with, not the hands you would have had if you had stayed in Lincolnshire. These hands, you think about this sometimes during the silver polishing, when you're looking at your hands doing the work, the cloth in your fingers moving in the small circles, bringing the silver back. These hands doing this thing, they are your hands, but they are also the hands the work has made, and the relationship between those two things is not exactly clear. Your mother's hands. You think about them now. You think about them in the way you think about her when you're not thinking about her directly, which is sideways, catching something at the edge of your attention that resolves into her. Her hands on the kitchen table in Lincolnshire, roughened the same way yours are becoming roughened, but the roughness of a different kind of work, of the washboard and the garden and the bread making and the catching of chickens, the domestic roughness of a woman who has been running a house with very little money for a very long time, and who has done it well, and who has never once, in your memory, said anything about it being too hard. She would be interested in this house. She would want to know everything about it. The range and the silver and the linens and the way the household is ordered. She would understand the order immediately. She would probably have observations about Mrs. Trent that would be accurate in the way her observations always are. You will tell her about it in the letter you write on Sunday. You write to her every 2 weeks, a single sheet of paper because paper costs money, and your letter-writing allowance from your wages is something you manage carefully. You tell her about the work and the house, but not about the hard days, because the hard days are ordinary, and writing about them would mean she worried, and there is nothing she can do about anything from Lincolnshire, and worry is a waste of her energy that she needs for other things. You tell her the things that are good. Mrs. Dobbin's porridge, the silver polishing, Mr. Harrington saying thank you, the tablecloth. She writes back about the village and your father and your younger brothers and the state of the field behind the house, and whether the winter was hard and news of people you went to school with. Her letters smell faintly of the kitchen at home, the specific smell of that kitchen which you could not have described before you left, and which you can identify precisely now from 20 feet away, when Bessie opens the envelope for you and passes it across the servants' hall table. That smell, wood smoke and bread and the slightly sweet edge of the dried flowers your mother keeps on the window-sill, that is the smell of the first 11 years of your life. It arrives in a letter from Lincolnshire every 2 weeks, and you read it in the servants' hall with the kitchen noise around you, and you fold it very carefully and put it in the box under your side of the mattress, where you keep the things that are yours. The box contains 4 letters from your mother, a prayer card from the church in your village that your mother gave you when you left, a small pencil drawing of the house you grew up in, done by your brother William, who is 12, and who drew it the week before you left because you asked him to, and who was very serious about doing it right, which means the proportions are slightly off, but the feeling is exactly correct. A spare hairpin, 6pence in a twist of paper that you're keeping for something you've not decided on yet. These are your things. Everything else in this attic room is the house's. You have no furniture of your own. You have your uniform, which is provided and partly owned by the household until you complete your service, and your own dress and coat and boots that you came with, still serviceable though the boots need resoling and you're putting off the cost. You have the hairpins that hold your cap in place, and the cap itself and the apron, and the specific undergarments that a housemaid in a house like this is expected to maintain. You have the letter writing paper and the stamps. You have the 6pence. It does not feel sparse to you. It felt sparse in the first weeks, the first month especially, when the smallness of everything you possessed was very visible and very immediate. But you've noticed that the wanting of things, of more things, of a room that is more a room and less a shared attic space, that wanting has faded, which is either adaptation or something more uncomfortable that you do not fully examine. You're not unhappy. That is important to say. You're not suffering in the way suffering is different from difficulty. You're working very hard in a very specific set of conditions for a wage that is not generous, but is what it is, and you are learning something every day, and you're sleeping and eating and becoming stronger and more capable, and at the end of it, at some point a few years from now, you will have something, a reference from Mrs. Trent, which, in the world of domestic service, is a currency as real as the pounds in the strongbox under the floorboards of the butler's pantry. A reference from Mrs. Trent of De Vere Gardens, Belgravia, will take you places your own name cannot take you. It will open doors. It will tell the next employer, and the employer after that you can be trusted with the work and with the house, and with the silver and with the range and with the family's things, and with the discretion that all of those things require. Discretion. That is perhaps the most constant requirement of this work. More constant than the fires or the water or the cleaning. You are inside this family's life. You see things. You hear things. The glove on the floor and the whiskey glass and the bell from the dressing room. You are present for the invisible ordinary of the family's private existence. What their rooms look like before they have had a chance to curate them for anyone. What the evidence of their evenings says about how their evenings actually are. None of this leaves the house. It goes nowhere. It tells no story outside these walls. It is the price of access, the consideration for being permitted to move through these rooms and do this work in them. What you see stays with you and is buried. You have buried things. Nothing dramatic. Nothing that would make a story. Just the ordinary things that the ordinary life of a prosperous household contains. The things that are the business of no one but the people they concern. The argument you almost certainly misread through a door in October. The look between Mr. and Mrs. Harrington over the breakfast table one morning when you carried in something and they did not notice you, and their faces were doing something that was clearly not for you to see, which you did not see, which does not exist. Mr. Graves's face when he looked at you in his room this morning, that is buried too. Whatever that was, whatever the 2 seconds of that evaluation meant or did not mean, it stays in the room. It goes nowhere. You are very good at burying things. This is also, in its way, a skill the work has given you. It is past midnight. You know this because the church bell on the street nearest to De Vere Gardens, St. Peter's, struck 12 a while ago, and there has been no subsequent striking of a half hour or another hour, which means either your sense of time is wrong, or the night is sitting very still between 12 and 1 in the way it sometimes does in February, the cold having slowed everything to the pace of a held breath. This is the deepest part of the night. The gin shop's still running in the rougher parts of the city, but quieter now, the most desperate drinkers having passed beyond even the gin shops into their corners and doorways. The watermen all ashore, the cabs on the streets thinning out as the last dinner party guests arrive home, and the last theatre-goers disperse, and the city begins the 4-hour transition from the end of its night to the beginning of its morning. In 4.5 hours you will wake up. But this is not a thought that frightens you the way it frightened you in your first month. In your first month you were awake at 1 in the morning doing this same calculation, and the calculation felt like a countdown to something terrible. Now it is just information. In 4.5 hours there will be a clock, and then a range, and then stairs and water and fires, and that is the morning, and the morning is fine, and right now there are 4.5 hours that are not the morning, that are this, the dark and the quiet and the feeling of your body having done everything it needed to do today. 4.5 hours, that is yours. You cannot count how many things in this house are yours for 4.5 hours. Almost nothing. The attic room, this half of the mattress, the box under the bed, but the sleep is yours. The 4.5 hours of it is entirely, completely, inalienably yours. No bell rings in the sleep. No stair needs climbing, no coal needs lifting. No surface waits to be inspected. Just this. Just the particular darkness of this specific February night in London in 1888, with the whole city around you doing whatever the city does in the middle of the night, and you in the middle of all of it and none of it, just breathing, just resting, just here. Take it. You have earned it, all of it, every quiet hour, every minute of it. The thing about a day like this one, a day that asks more than a usual day asks, is that it ends the same way. It ends with you here, in this bed, in this dark. The extra rooms and the extra weight and the extra hours, they are done. They have been absorbed. They are now part of the day that is ending rather than the day that is still happening. You held the day. It was heavy and you held it. Now you can put it down. Put it down. All of it. The range will wait for you. The coal will wait. The back stairs will wait. Mrs. Trent will wait. The cream jug and the leaf at the base of the handle and the table linen in the press, they will all wait. They have always waited. They will always wait. Everything in this house except you is patient in the way that objects are patient, which is absolutely, which is infinitely, which is with no preference whatsoever for when you arrive. As long as you arrive and do the work correctly, you will arrive. You will do the work correctly, but not now. Now is for the other thing. The thing that is also yours. The thing that no one can take from you, and no one can inspect, and no one can find fault with. The sleep. Let it be enough that the fires are lit and the water was carried, and the silver is bright and the table is set for Thursday, and the range is banked and the house is warm and the coal is counted and the linen is pressed and the day is done and you are here. Let it be enough. It is enough. More than enough. It is the whole of tonight, and tonight is whole and you are in it, and it is yours. The sounds of London are a murmur. They have been a murmur for an hour. They will be a murmur until the city turns itself back on before dawn, until the night shift gives way to the morning shift, until the back stairs fill with footsteps again. But that is not now. Now is the murmur. Now is the dark. Now is the coal and beeswax smell of this house, this specific house, which smells like the work that keeps it alive and which you will recognize anywhere you go for the rest of your life. The smell of a house like this, the particular combination of substances and effort that constitutes a well-run Victorian household in Belgravia in winter. You will carry this smell with you, not on purpose, not consciously, but the way things that are very present for a long time become part of you without announcement. You will carry it, and someday, somewhere, you will smell something that is close to it, and something will happen in you that is recognition and memory at once, and you will be briefly, unexpectedly 16 again, in this attic room, in this February, on this night. But that is years away. Right now you are just here, just now, just the present moment of this night, the clock, the dark, the quiet, the breathing of Bessie beside you, the house holding its heat, the city doing what the city does, and you, finally, completely, without reservation, asleep. Good night. There is something you have not yet told. What happened on Thursday? Thursday was the dinner party. The green dress was repaired. The linen press did its work. The table was set by Haynes with the silver you had polished, and the tablecloth you had pressed, and the flowers Mrs. Harrington arranged herself in the Eppergen, an arrangement of white and yellow that took her 45 minutes, and that she adjusted 3 times until it satisfied her. The dinner guests arrived at 7. You heard them in the servants' hall through the ceiling, the particular sound of a formal party gathering, voices and movement and the different quality of the house when it is being presented versus when it is simply inhabited. Your job was the same as any evening: available, present, invisible. At 8:23 you were in the back passage with a tray carrying a set of soup plates back to the kitchen, because Haynes had signalled for the second course, and the first plates needed clearing. The tray was the large silver one, the oval tray with the scalloped edge that lives in the butler's pantry, and is used only for formal service. You were carrying it in both hands, with the plates arranged correctly, moving at the speed you'd learned was right for this corridor, fast enough to be efficient, controlled enough to be safe. The back door to the servants' corridor, the door between the corridor and the kitchen passage, has a spring mechanism. You know this. You have always known this. The spring pulls the door closed if you do not hold it, which means you prop it open when you're carrying large trays through it by using your foot, your left foot, which you extend and catch the door with as you move through. On Thursday evening at 8:23 you caught the door with your left foot, and the door pushed back against your foot with slightly more force than usual, because the spring had been tightened. When had the spring been tightened? You do not know. Possibly that day, possibly the day before, possibly it had always been tighter on the hinge side and you had simply never encountered this exact sequence. The heavy tray in both hands, the need for the left foot, the spring's increased resistance meeting the foot that was moving through its standard trajectory. The door pushed back, your left foot pushed back. The tray shifted. 3 soup plates slid across the silver oval in the direction of the shift. 2 of them hit the raised edge of the tray and stopped. The third did not. It went over the edge. It did not fall all the way. Your right hand released the tray handle and caught the plate, one-handed, with the instinct of someone who has spent 6 months learning exactly where breakable things are and exactly how fast they move when they're about to break. But the catch, The one-handed catch caused the tray to tilt further. The two plates that had been against the raised edge were now on a surface that was no longer flat. They slid. You caught the tray with both hands again. One plate was on the floor. It was broken. A clean break. Two pieces, which for a moment suggested the possibility that it might be almost repaired. The kind of break that almost looks fixable if you don't look too hard. But looking harder showed the crack continuing from where it had separated. A hairline that meant the plate was not almost fixable but was simply broken. You stood in the corridor with the tray in your hands and a broken soup plate in two pieces on the flagstone floor, and the sounds of the dinner party continuing through the walls, and you understood very precisely what had happened and what it meant. The plates were the Harrington dinner service, Worcester porcelain, the blue and white set with the gilded rim that lives in the locked glass cabinet in the dining room and comes out for formal occasions. You did not know the value of a single plate from that service. You knew it was more than your weekly wage. You suspected it was more than your monthly wage. You stood there for perhaps 3 seconds. Then you knelt down and picked up both pieces. You set them on the tray against the raised edge carefully, as if being careful now did something about the break. You carried the tray to the kitchen. You set it on the preparation table. You looked at the pieces. Mrs. Dobbins was at the range. She looked at the plate. She looked at you. She said nothing, which was the worst possible response. Mrs. Dobbins had opinions about everything and stated them readily. Her silence meant something was serious enough that she was choosing not to be the one to address it. You went to find Mrs. Trent. Mrs. Trent was in her sitting room, the small room off the servants' hall that she uses for the household accounts and her own correspondence, working by lamplight on something you did not register. You said, "Mrs. Trent, I need to tell you something." She looked up. You told her. There was a pause. "Where is the plate?" she asked. "Kitchen, Mrs. Trent, on the preparation table." She followed you to the kitchen. She looked at the two pieces of the plate. She picked up one piece and then the other. She put them down. You stood beside the preparation table and said nothing and waited. "The door spring," she said. "Yes, Mrs. Trent." "You've used that door 1,000 times with a tray." "Yes, Mrs. Trent. The spring was different today. Or I was in the wrong position. I should have." "I know you should have," she said. She was not saying this unkindly. She was stating the fact. You should have known the spring might behave differently. You should have had a more conservative position with the tray. You should have had a margin for error. You did not have these things in that exact moment, and the plate was on the floor. She was quiet for a moment. "You told me immediately," she said. "Yes, Mrs. Trent." She looked at you, the particular look, inventory. "The value of that plate will be discussed with Mr. Haynes tomorrow. It's possible the cost will be taken from your wages over time." She paused. "It's also possible that the spring on the door needs replacing, and that will be taken into account." A pause. "Go back to your duties." You went back to the back passage. You stood there for 10 minutes with the dinner party continuing on the other side of the door and your heart doing something that was not quite fear anymore but was its aftermath. The feeling after a near miss that isn't really a near miss because the thing happened but could have been worse, and the question of whether it was bad enough to constitute a catastrophe is still open. You waited. At the end of the evening, after the guests had gone and the table was cleared and the clearing up was running in the kitchen, Mrs. Trent found you in the servants' hall. She said, "The spring will be replaced, no deduction from wages." And then she walked away. You sat at the servants' hall table for a moment by yourself. The kitchen was running behind you. Bessie was at the sink, Thomas was carrying stacked plates in from the dining room. The particular noise of the house closing down after a formal evening was all around you. Mrs. Trent had looked at the situation and assessed it, and decided that you had not been reckless and that the equipment had been the problem, and that you had come to her immediately when the thing happened, and that these facts, taken together, constituted a different conclusion from the one you'd been dreading. She'd been fair. This is a thing you're allowed to notice. Mrs. Trent is demanding. Her standards are high. Her tolerance for error is low, and her communication of consequences is precise and not gentle. But she's also fair in the exact sense of applying her assessment to the actual facts of a situation, rather than to a simplified version of them. She looked at what happened, and she looked at why, and she looked at what you did after, and she made a fair assessment. Not every employer does this. You know this because your mother told you, and because Bessie has worked in a house where this was not the case, and Bessie does not talk about it much. But when she does, you can hear the difference. You have Mrs. Trent, who is demanding and precise and correct in her expectations and fair in her assessments. This is, you're aware, a kind of luck. After the dinner party, after the plates were done and the final round of the rooms complete, and the house closed for the night, you carried one thing back to the attic with you that you had not had that morning: the broken plate. Not the physical plate. Mrs. Trent had taken the pieces, and the broken plate would go wherever broken things go in a household this size, to a cupboard somewhere out with a kitchen waste, or to a restorer if a restorer could make it whole again, which with a clean break was possible. But the fact of the plate, the fact that you broke something, that despite 6 months of careful movement in rooms full of breakable things, despite having memorized the location of every fragile object on every surface of every room you work in, despite being careful, you broke something. This sat with you, not as guilt exactly, more as information, as the update to your model of yourself as someone who does not break things, the revision required by evidence that you can and do, under the right combination of circumstances, break things. That the model of complete reliability you have been building in yourself is not complete, that it has a condition, correct circumstances, no unexpected variables. Change one element of a familiar route, and the familiar route is not familiar anymore. You will not be caught by the door spring again. You will never again go through that door with a full tray without first testing the spring's resistance with your foot before committing to the movement. But there are other door springs. There are other unexpected variables. There are 100 things in this house that you think you know, and that will at some point reveal themselves to be slightly different from what you thought. And on one of those occasions you will be carrying something you cannot afford to drop. What do you do with that knowledge? You carry it. You add it to the sum of what you know. You do not let it make you slow with the trays, because slow with the trays means the soup reaches the table. Cold, and cold soup at a dinner party is a visible failure, more visible than a broken plate in the back corridor. You do not let it make you hesitant. Hesitation is worse than speed in this work, because hesitation interrupts the rhythm, and the rhythm is what makes the work look effortless. You carry the knowledge of the broken plate and you use it. That is what you do with things in this work. You carry them and you use them. Mrs. Trent told you something in your second month, in the context of a correction about the way you were setting the grate. You were doing it in a way that was almost right, but not completely right, and she stood beside you and showed you the correct way, and then she said, "You will not need to be told this again." Not a question, a statement of expectation, a statement of belief, almost, in your capacity to absorb this information and never require it again. She was right. You have never set a grate that way again. That is the contract between you and Mrs. Trent. She tells you once, correctly and clearly, and you hold what she tells you, and it becomes part of how you do the work permanently. You're not given the same information twice in this house. You're expected to hold what you're given and to build on it, and to arrive at a point where your knowledge of the work is as complete and reliable as the work itself requires. Some days you feel close to that point. Some days the broken plate on the flagstone floor tells you how far you still have to go. Both of those things are true at once. This is what it means to be in the middle of something. Not at the beginning, where everything is new and the gap between where you are and where you need to be is so large it is almost motivating in its simplicity. And not at the end, where the gap has closed and the knowledge is fully integrated and the work runs in you without conscious effort. You're in the middle, where some things are solid and some things are still in process, where you can light a fire in 7 minutes in a cold room at 5 in the morning and also break a Worcester plate in the back corridor on a Thursday. The middle is where the learning actually happens. The beginning is preparation, the end is mastery. The middle is where you do the thing badly and then better still, where the failures are specific enough to generate specific corrections, where you can feel yourself changing in the direction of competence without yet being there. You are in the middle. You are 16 years old and you are in the middle, and you have a letter from your mother arriving on Thursday, and your boots need resoling and your knees hurt in the morning, and your hands know the weight of 20 pounds of water on 3 flights of stairs, and the smell of this house is in your sleep now, part of the texture of your sleeping mind, and the range will need you at 5 and the back stairs will wait in the dark for your feet to know them again. This is where you are. This is enough. This is, in the fullness of it and the difficulty of it and the small bright moments scattered through it, like the early light on the drawing-room windows in the afternoon. Enough. The whole of this life, this specific life, yours, enough. Let it be enough. Let the clock tick toward morning. Let the night have its few hours. Let London murmur its nighttime murmur. Let Bessie sleep her steady sleep. Let the range cool to its night state. Patient, waiting, holding enough heat to catch from the paper you will lay tomorrow. Let the back stairs be dark and quiet and completely, entirely still. Let the water in the copper cans sit cold until morning. Let the linen stay pressed. Let the silver stay bright. Let everything hold until you are rested enough to begin again. You will be rested enough to begin again at 4:37. You will begin again. You always begin again. That is perhaps the truest thing about this work. It begins again. It has always begun again. Every morning in every house like this, in every city where people require coal fires and hot water and pressed linens and polished silver and clean rooms, someone gets up before the light and begins again. You are that person in this house, on this street, in this city, in this year. You are the one who begins again. And on this night, on this February night, with the clock not yet ticking toward the morning, and Bessie breathing beside you, and the London city murmuring its ancient particular murmur, you are resting so that the beginning can happen. It will happen. It happens every morning. It will happen tomorrow. But right now, for these hours, in this dark, in this quiet, only the rest, only the rest, only the sleep. Good night. There is one more thing that belongs to this day and that should be said before the sleep takes it. This morning at 5:14, in the kitchen, before Mrs. Dobbins arrived and before Bessie came down and before any version of the day had declared itself, you stood by the range with the match lit and the paper laid and the kindling arranged, and you touched the match to the paper, and you watched the fire catch. It takes about 4 seconds. The paper catches first, the flame moving across it in a particular way you have watched hundreds of times now, not evenly, not in a perfectly expanding circle, but unevenly, following the specific paths of best combustion through the folded and crumpled paper, finding the most available fuel and taking it first, and then moving to the next, and then the next. The flame is different every time in its exact pattern. The paper catches differently every morning depending on how it was crumpled, and where the air pockets are, and whether the kindling above it is perfectly dry or has absorbed any of the kitchen's moisture overnight. Every fire is different. You know this now. You light 7 fires a morning and they are all the same procedure, and they all follow the same steps, and the materials are the same every day. And the result is always fire, but the path from match to fire is never exactly the same twice. The flame finds its own way each time. You lay the conditions and the flame chooses its path. You watched it for 4 seconds this morning, and then you closed the fire door to half open and stood up, and your knees announced themselves and you continued. But in those 4 seconds you were watching the flame find its path through the paper, and you were, in some low, wordless way, pleased by it. Not pleased in the sense of emotion exactly. Pleased in the sense of fit. The match and the paper and the kindling and the coal and the range and you fitting together correctly, doing the thing that makes the house warm. That is the thing about this work. Not every part of it, and not every morning, but sometimes in the small moments of fit, when the thing you are doing and the way you're doing it and the conditions you're doing it in align, there is something there. Something small and exact and not requiring any particular celebration but worth noticing. The fire caught this morning. It catches every morning. This morning it caught particularly well. The kindling taking quickly, the coal sitting right in its arrangement, the chimney drawing cleanly from the first moment. By the time you stood up and turned around, the range was already making its waking sound, the particular murmur of air beginning to move in the chimney, which is one of the best sounds in the world if you've spent enough mornings learning to hear it. The house was warming. You had done that. In the back of this house, on this street, in this city, in this February, at 5:14 in the morning, you had done that. This is what you are. This is what you do. This is the specific small piece of the world that is yours to keep functioning. Not the whole house, not the family, not the city, just this. The fires, the water, the silver, the rooms, the narrow scope of a 16-year-old housemaid's daily accountability. And within that scope, done well, a contribution to the warmth of the world. You think this is perhaps a large way to describe what is, in its essence, a job. You think Mrs. Trent would probably find it excessive. You think the practical version of this observation is simply, the fires were lit correctly, and the range was drawing well before Mrs. Dobbins arrived, and the house was warm and you were on time. But the practical version and the large version are both true. They can both be true at once. The fire lit correctly in the practical sense is also the fire that heats the room, that warms the family, that makes the morning possible. Both things at once. You're allowed to know this. You're allowed to hold both the practical fact and the larger one. The way you hold the water cans in both hands, one on each side, the practical and the slightly more than practical, balanced equally, moving through the back stairs at the same steady pace. Both hands, equal weight, up the stairs. That is the work. That is the whole of it. Go to sleep now. The range will be cold in the morning, and the stairs will be dark, and Mrs. Trent will be doing her inventory look, and Mrs. Dobbins will be at the range by 6:15, and the hot water cans will need filling, and the silver will need checking, and the rooms will need doing, and the linen will need turning. All of it. Tomorrow. But right now, for these last few minutes before the sleep takes you fully and completely, just this. The dark, the quiet, the warmth under the blanket, the sound of London being London outside the window, the smell of this house, which is the smell of the work that keeps it alive, which is also now the smell of your life. You are warm enough. You are fed enough. You are safe enough. You have done the work. You will do it again tomorrow. You will do it for however many tomorrows it takes to become the person who does this work the way it deserves to be done. You are already, in some mornings and some fires and some polished silver pieces and some correctly set grates, that person. You are becoming her. She is coming. She will be here by the time the clock goes off. She is always here by the time the clock goes off. Let her rest until then. Let her sleep. Let her have the night, the whole of it, the dark and the quiet and the particular piece of a body that has done everything it was asked to do and is now, in the evidence of that, at rest. She has earned this. You have earned this. Good night, Ada. Good night.